I woke to a sound the earth itself seemed to swallow, metal biting dirt. It was 3 a.m. The house was a sleeping beast. My husband's snore rattled the headboard like a train that never arrives, and the clock on my nightstand insisted on being honest. I didn't turn on the light. I slid from bed, the kind of slide you learn when you were a kid sneaking cookies at midnight, and parted the curtain with 2 fingers. My daughter stood in the yard, in my herbs, stabbing the shovel down like she was punishing the planet. Pale hoodie, dark hair tucked into a cap, breath fogging the night. A spotlight moon. She didn't see me at first. The hole grew 1, 2, 3, like a metronome keeping time for a song I didn't want to know. She laid something into it, something small but heavy, the way you place a fear under your pillow and hope the tooth fairy is hiring out of season. Then she looked up. She saw me. Our eyes met through glass and dark, and my mother brain said, "Don't move." She straightened. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She just stood there, and the night yawned wider between us. A minute later, the back door opened. I heard her steps through the kitchen, the cautious creak of the hallway floorboard, the third one from the stairs that always tattled. I slid back into bed, my heartbeat counting spoons in a drawer. My husband snored. I closed my eyes, practicing the rise and fall of a sleeping woman who didn't just witness her child dig the earth like a fox with a secret. By breakfast, she was mascara and lip gloss, the night erased. Morning, she said, like the word owed her rent. She left for work in a tidy ponytail without looking at the lawn. I watched the car disappear. Then I went to the shed, took our shovel, and made friends with the truth. What I found there, well, you'll get the headline. First, you need the back page. Erica, that's me. I say it out loud sometimes, just to hear how it lands now that the world thinks I should be quiet. 58, New Jersey suburbs, 2 knees that forecast rain better than the local meteorologist, and a temper I keep wrapped in a silk scarf until someone yanks the bow. I'm not shy about my name. I earned it the way you earn calluses, slowly, stubbornly, and with very little applause. My husband and I are orphans, the both of us. Different towns, same small mercy. Someone bothered to write down our birthdays. Nobody wrote down our mother's lullabies, so we made our own. We built life in coupon clippings and second-hand furniture and laughter that stuck to the walls like paint. We bought our little house with the sunroom that heats too fast in the summer and freezes a little in December. In that house, we raised our daughter as if the world were a place where kindness keeps receipts. She had everything a girl could dream of because I dreamed big and didn't sleep much. Piano lessons, soccer cleats, a room full of books and choices. When she went to college, we got distant, not miles, just manners. The dinners got shorter, the phone calls staged, the smiles curated. I knew she had a boyfriend named Daniel. Nathan was a rumor the rumor denied. Daniel was the truth in leather shoes. I asked her to bring him for Thanksgiving. She came alone. She closed her door that night and talked to a friend on speaker, forgetting that sound travels in houses raised by women with ears. I'm embarrassed to show them to Nathan, she said, so maybe there were to Daniels after all. They live a miserable life. Mom cooks things he won't eat. They're reclusive, old-fashioned, and the house stinks of herbs and Mom's crazy diet teas. Dad asks stupid questions. If Daniel sees what kind of people made me, he'll lose his love. People will tell you that words can't kill. They can. It's just that mothers don't die easy. I stood in the hallway with my hand on the wall like a woman balancing on the edge of a high heel. I let one tear fall, as a treat, then swallowed the rest. I went to my bedroom and told my husband everything. He said he'd talk to her. We didn't have a conversation. We hosted a small war. She lobbed grenades and left for campus 2 days early, smoke in her wake. My husband, he's good. But good men get angry when they've run out of ways to be kind. We stopped paying her loan, he said, lips thin. Me? Loyalty is my bad habit. Give her time, I said. The universe heard me and sent a girl I liked to our porch with pumpkin pie and Stalin from her mother's bakery. She's ghosted me too, the girl said, setting sweetness on our table. New crowd. Rich kids. She says she's different now, Different is a polite word for gone. Then the money started evaporating from my husband's credit card. Not gas or textbooks, designer labels, and a phone that cost a mortgage payment in a country with better rent. He froze the card, pressed pause on the loan payments. The timing was poetic. She was buying gold earrings when the cashier said, declined, and suddenly our number was worth dialing. She came home with apologies that had good posture. We forgave her because forgiving is how parents keep their balance. That same night, I heard her in the backyard, smoke curling into sentences. I did it, she told a new friend. They believed me. I'm an actress. The old people have money dad wants to invest it, but I have other plans. I'm moving to New York. I need a wardrobe and apartment. I'm done with dorms. The next morning, my watches were missing, the pearl necklace my grandmother smuggled through a winter in a coat hem, my rings gone. Give them back, I said, soft but sharp. Don't pawn them. They're all I have left of her. She chewed her gum and shrugged. Too late. I took the train to New York. Pawn shops are little museums of regret. I went 1 to 5 and didn't find a single ghost I could buy back. The clerk at the last one looked at me like I'd brought him a fairy tale and asked for a receipt. By the time I came home, my husband had noticed 2 of his watches gone, plus $5,000 in cash he'd kept for house repairs. He slammed a drawer and broke the handle clean off. Enough, he said, and enough sounded like a door locking. 6 months of silence followed, if you can call a girl screaming into a phone silence. You don't love me if you won't help me, she said. Love is not a debit card, but try telling that to a storm. Then she came back, apologies reheated, eyes a little duller. Expelled. Failed everything. We read it in the way she folded her clothes like they offended her. We let her return to her room because mercy is a muscle you lose if you don't use it. She got a job at the supermarket, came home smelling like oranges and gossip, and somewhere in that citrus breeze she met Bill. Bill is the kind of man who collects police reports like other men collect baseball cards. They said he might be dealing. I said nothing, which is loud for me. Suddenly, my daughter had cash, nice clothes, a new smile with corners I didn't recognize. She handed my husband an envelope with the exact amount he'd lost. What's this? He asked. A refund, she said, as if virtue were something you could give back with the receipt still warm. Then the police came. Morning. Bad coffee, worse timing. They knocked like they were trying to teach the door a lesson, warrant in hand. We have reason to believe there are narcotics stored on the premises. They found a package in our dressing room, tucked into a grocery bag, my husband's fingerprints because he'd carried bananas in it last week. It's slapstick how quickly a person becomes a suspect for buying produce. They took him. I posted bail with money that tasted like metal. We tried to talk to our daughter. She smiled the way a cat smiles when it knows where the birds are. Don't come near me, she said. It'll be worse for you, worse than cops in our beloved closet. Worse than the look on my husband's face when the cell door swallowed him. I didn't think so, but I've learned not to underestimate my child's creativity. So when I saw her at M, burying a secret like it had a pulse, my first thought was drugs. I dug with my husband that morning to orphans with one shovel, carving out the shape of our own education. Dirt gave way to plastic, plastic to velvet, velvet to gilt. Jewelry. My watch, the pearls, the rings, but not just ours. A bracelet with emeralds the size of a lie, my friends. A neighbor's necklace. A handful of other pieces I recognized from church necks and toe auctions. It wasn't a stash. It was a catalog. I didn't speak. My husband didn't either. We knelt in the dirt like parishioners who had just found out their hymn book was hollow. I felt something rattle loose in my chest, fear or relief. I couldn't tell which, only that the rattle sounded like a beginning. I brushed soil from the emerald bracelet and thought about the girl who brought me pumpkin pie. Then I thought about the mother who kept the pearl necklace safe through a winter so brutal it broke stories. I have her jawline and her stubbornness. I decided in that second to borrow her courage. We can't unsee it, I said. We can't, he agreed. We call the police. He nodded, slow. We do. I wrapped the velvet in a plastic grocery bag, our new family crest, and rose. The sun was high now, making the lawn look fresh, innocent. The back door was slightly ajar. A cold little breeze curled out of the kitchen like a question mark. That's when I heard it. The click of our front door lock turning, the scrape of a key that wasn't mine, and my daughter's voice floating down the hallway with a tone like she was the one who paid the bills. Mom? Dad? I tightened my grip on the bag and looked at my husband. He looked at me. We were orphans again, choosing our own names. In the next breath, I'd either save my child or finally admit what she'd become. The door swung open, and she stepped into the kitchen, eyes sweeping our faces, then dropping to the dirt on our knees. She smiled, bright, dangerous, and absolutely sure of herself. Lose something? She asked. And that is when I realized this story, mine Erica's, wasn't going to be about begging for our daughter to be better. It was going to be about the spine you grow when your heart breaks. I straightened, felt the silk scarf slip from my temper, and decided to let it. Actually, I said, walking toward her with the bag, we found something. Her gaze flicked to the window, to the backyard, to our hands. The color drained, then returned, then settled somewhere cruel. She opened her mouth to speak. Behind her, in the foyer, the doorbell rang. Once, twice. Then a fist hit wood with the kind of insistence only badges wear. Police, a voice called. We need to ask a few questions. My daughter froze, the kind of stillness that tells you an animal is cataloging exits. My husband took one step forward. I took one step closer to the handle. Some secrets bury themselves. Ours just learned to knock. Erica, still me, in case you lost track in the dark. I've got a grocery bag full of velvet and sins, 2 palms gritty with lawn, and a daughter who looks at me the way a cat looks at a canary, curious, hungry, just a little bored. There's a knock that's more like a promise. Police, the voice repeats, through our door and into our ribs. I set the bag gently on the counter, the way you set down an explosive when you think it might be sentimental. My husband reaches for the doorknob. Our daughter takes a step back, and her eyes do math to parents. One back door, a window she could clear if she didn't care about scars. I beat her to the calculation. Kitchen door stuck, I say, as if we solved it yesterday with WD-40 and prayer. You'll want the front. Her jaw tightens. She knows I know. My husband opens the door, and 2 officers step into our lemon-scented foyer like they're tracking mud. One is tall with a haircut that says he's learned not to get too attached. The other is quick-eyed and too young to have seen what she's already seen. Mrs. and Mr. Stone. Quick Eyes asks, scanning faces. We've had reports of stolen property in the neighborhood. We'd like to ask a few questions. Her gaze lands on my daughter. And you are? Our mistake, my daughter says, smiling with her whole face except the truth. You must have the wrong house. Oh, we frequently do, I say. It's why we brought a map. I hold up the grocery bag with the neat little clink of bracelets and accusations. But since you're here, the tall one arches an eyebrow like it's his best feature. I untie the bag and peel back velvet. Pearls that remember winters, emeralds the size of greed, a tumble of gold that has probably witnessed more toasts than baptisms. Quick Eyes doesn't blink. Tall writes something down he'll pretend not to read again. Found in our yard, I say, nodding toward the window. Buried at 3 in the morning by my daughter. I wash through the glass because I am, against all medical advice, a mother. My daughter laughs. She's confused, she says, all sugar. She takes these herbal teas that make her lively. I finish, smiling. Officer, you'll forgive me if I skip the character assassination this early. May I show you where we dug? We shuffle out to the lawn, my husband carrying the bag, me carrying a comb I ironed 10 minutes ago. The hole is right where she left it, raw and honest. The officers crouch, their shadow falling into the pit like a warning label. Quick Eyes takes photos with a phone older than the one my daughter bought on my husband's dime. Tall bags a few crumbs of dirt like the ground might testify. Miss, Quick Eyes says, turning back to my daughter, care to explain why your family's yard was used as a lost and found? My boyfriend, she says immediately. Bill, He's dramatic. He brought me this junk to keep for him. I told him no, he did it anyway. I was going to give it back, I add, in the same way I'm going to run a marathon someday. It's the thought. Is Bill here? Tall asks. He doesn't live here, my daughter says. He's barely a friend. I broke up with him. Elevator relationships, I say. Always up and down, Mrs. Stone. Quick Eyes says, warm but lined. May we look around inside? You can look around my regrets. The house is easier, I say, and lead them in. My husband's hand touches my back steady, silent, apologizing for things he didn't do and for the bag that bore his fingerprints when produce and felony shared a handle. The search is neat. They know where people keep the things they can't bear to lose and the things they hope no one finds. In the dressing room, Quick Eyes pauses at the memory of last week, the grocery bag that carried bananas and charges. I meet her look and shrug. What else is there to do when your life is a Venn diagram of innocent and incriminating? Do you give consent to search your daughter's room? She asks. I don't look at my daughter. I've been looking at her for years, and it hasn't changed the math. Yes, I say. No, my daughter says, at the exact same time. You can't. This is illegal. Actually, I say, because I like to be helpful, it's very legal. We're on the mortgage. Her room smells like perfume and secrets. The officers are respectful, the way a surgeon is respectful. Efficient, clinical, grateful for good lighting. It doesn't take long. Quick Eyes finds a false bottom showbox in the closet. Inside, a dozen pawn tickets, 3 different names, cash, a little baggie of sugar that isn't sugar folded into a receipt from the supermarket where she works. Bill is nothing if not thematic. There's a second phone with the kind of cracked screen that suggests it has hit more walls than floors. Tall holds up the tickets. Little bit of a paper trail, he says. My daughter's face goes blank. The mask they teach in Theater 101 for. I've made a choice and it didn't choose me back. You set me up, she says to me, soft as a knife. You went through my stuff, you buried it under the rosemary, I say. I don't go through your things. Your things go through me. Quick Eye slips the phone into evidence. Miss Stone, she says, we're going to need you to come down to the station to answer a few questions. What if I don't? My daughter asks, chin up, eyes flicking toward my husband like he's an exit she can fit through. Then we'll answer them here, on record, with a warrant that takes longer and cares less. Tall says. She glances at me to beg, to threaten, to bargain. I give her the expression my own life gave me. One that says I'll walk with you to the wolf store but I will not hold the hinge. I'll drive, my husband says. I want to make sure she gets no, I say. There's a tone married women have that means we're saving you from a second mistake. We'll follow in my car. Let the professionals do their job. He nods because he's good and because he knows I'm better when I've made a decision. That's our marriage. I am the torch, he is the map, and we make it through most nights without burning the paper. At the station, there are fluorescent lights that flatten everyone into suspects. We wait. Our daughter sits across a table in a room with a camera. I can't hear her words, but I can read her posture, the way a mother reads a weather map. She's charming, then righteous, then small. When the small doesn't work, she grows teeth. A woman in a blazer arrives and slides a business card through glass. Public defender, she says. For now, she eyes me the way women eye each other when they recognize a familiar battlefield. You okay? I know worse 4-letter words than fine, I say. But I'll take it for today. Hours stick. Coffee dies. Paperwork is born already bored. Finally, Quick Eye steps into the waiting area with a face that has practiced being unreadable. We're charging her with possession of stolen property, she says, and questioning her about the narcotics in your home last week. The prints on that grocery bag are your husband's. The lab confirms the residue in your closet was cocaine. The timeline is interesting. Interesting, I repeat, because euphemisms need friends. Officer, my daughter hates to be bored. She found adventure with a man who treats handcuffs like a hobby. She planted that bag. She's not good at empathy, but she's excellent at logistics. Quick Eyes watches me, calculating whether my story feels like a script or like testimony. Do you want to make a statement? I want to make a start, I say, and then I want to make peace. We give our statements. We are careful with the truth the way you're careful carrying soup across a carpet. Slow, balanced, hoping no one bumps your elbow. When we're done, we step outside. The air is the kind of late afternoon that wants to be a different season. On the sidewalk, Bill is waiting. You know him without being introduced. Expensive hoodie, cheap bravado, a smile that considers itself customer service. He tips his head at me. You must be Mom, he says, as if the word is a joke we all get. I am, I say. You must be the reason my gardener keeps suggesting raised beds. You're funny, he says, and the smile gets narrower. Funny doesn't look good on a witness stand. Good thing I look good in everything, I say, and step closer. You brought my daughter a collection of necklaces that didn't belong to her, then let her bury them like time capsules for the police. That's sloppy, darling. Sloppy is telling cops your kid's a thief, he says. Sloppy is thinking I won't tell them more, I correct. You're not good at risk assessment. That's why you're still doing runs for men who don't remember your last name. He blinks. The bravado flickers. He wasn't expecting a mother who speaks fluent wolf. Careful, he says finally. You don't want this to get worse. I'm a mother, I say. It's a little late to threaten me with worse. He backs away with a laugh that smells like cheap mint. Tell your husband I liked his watch, he says, and disappears into a car that has seen more alleys than driveways. We go home. The house is a stage after closing. Props where they shouldn't be, lines echoing. My husband sits at the table and puts his face in his hands. He's never looked old to me, not when we were 20 and counting quarters, not when we were 40 and counting days till payday. He looks tired now. Tired as Older's clever cousin. Did we do this? He asks, voice small. Did we make her this? We made her a door, I say. She chose which side to stand on, he nods, but grief doesn't accept logic as a form of payment. That night, I sleep like a cat in a thunderstorm, one ear always open. Around 2, a car idles out front. Headlights sweep the ceiling like someone searching for bugs. I go to the window and, in the glow, see a shadow cross our lawn. I'm too tired to be afraid. I'm a mother. Fear is a coat I keep on a hook near the door. In the morning, under the welcome mat, there's a note in a handwriting I recognize from forged permission slips. It says, "You made a mistake." Under the words, a photo, our dressing room, the grocery bag. The timestamp is from last week, the morning of the search. The angle is from inside the house. Bill, my husband says. Or her, I say. She's not above documentation. The phone rings mid-thought. It's Quick Eyes. We've booked her, she says. She's not getting bail today. She's angry. She claims you planted the jewelry to frame her. She also said your husband's prints on the narcotics bag prove he's dealing. I bark out a laugh that startles both of us. My husband deals in crosswords, I say. He's a master at 10-letter words for heartache. She wants you to know, Quick Eyes adds carefully, that she'll get even when she gets out. I assume threats would be included, I say. Some branches you can't prune. Do you need a protective order? She asks. I need a plan, I say. And a locksmith. We get both. The new locks click like knuckles cracking. The plan takes longer because plans do when you're inventing them with a stapler and a prayer. I start with the neighbors. I bake an apology pie because America runs on carbs and news. I bring the emerald bracelet to my friend, the one who brought pumpkin pie to my doorstep when my daughter first ran from her old life. Her eyes fill and empty in the same second. We hug, and in the middle of the hug I decide, if my daughter insists on being the storm, then I will be the levee. Not pretty, not easy, but stubborn enough to hold. The next week is a grid of task statements, insurance forms, adult education in the school of consequence. The police called twice more. They've connected the tickets to 3 break-ins and 1 robbery that had an old woman shaking in her slippers while a hand riffled through her jewelry box. Every update is a nail in a coffin I never wanted to build. I hammer anyway. I sleep some nights and do math on others' years, sentences, rescue. Then the hearing. She doesn't look at us when they bring her in, chains a quiet sentence of their own. Her face is clean of makeup. She looks younger and older in a way only grief and arrogance can manage. Bill is nowhere. He's vapor. That's the thing about smoke. It makes the fire look guilty while it slips out the window, the public defender argues. The prosecutor recites. The judge listens like a man who has heard it all twice. He pounds wood and assigns the future letters and numbers. She turns then. Finally, her eyes find me like a heat-seeking missile. I'll get even, she mouths, as if the words might taste better without air. I don't flinch. I hold her gaze, and I mouth back something older than threats. So will I, because that's the part people don't understand about women like me, women who build family out of imagination and coupons, women who have watched love back into a driveway and then watched it drive away again. We are not saints. We are architects. If you hand us ruin, we draw plans. Outside the courthouse, the air is knife-sharp. Quick Eyes walks us to the curb. She'll be in county for now, she says. Her boyfriend's name keeps surfacing, but he's skittish. If you hear from him, call me. We will, I say. If I were him, I'd change my haircut and my city. Men like him change hats, she says, not habits. We drive home in a silence that's not empty. It's full of lists, repairs, locks, new routines. At a red light, my husband reaches for my hand, and our fingers interlace without asking. I think about the night nurse who looked at a nameless baby and loaned her a name. I think about how sometimes a name is a house you build in yourself, and sometimes if the storm is big enough you learn to evacuate. When we pull into our driveway, an envelope is propped on our door. No stamp, no address. Inside, a single sheet, a printout of an email I never sent, confessing to pawning my own jewelry for pills. The date is yesterday. The signature is my name. The headers are laughably fake. The threat is not. At the bottom, a handwritten postscript. Nice house. Shame if you had to leave. My husband looks at me. She's inside, even from in there, he says. For now, I reply, and I feel something click into place in my chest, not anger, not grief. Architecture. I have a floor plan now. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asks. I'm thinking we need to become a little less findable, I say. And a lot more dangerous. I tape the false email to the fridge like a child's drawing. Let it remind me what she can do. I put on a pot of my ridiculous herb tea, the one she mocked. I swear it smells like resolve. I sit at the table with a notebook and write to lists. What we'll sell, who we'll warn. In the margin, I write a sentence that feels like a dare. If blood is thicker than water, then courage is thicker than both. And then because I'm a woman who believes in a good omen, when I can't find a good exit, the wind shifts. Somewhere, a wind chime rings a note that sounds a lot like a beginning, which is when the doorbell rings again. Not the police this time. Not a neighbor. I open it, and on the step stands a woman I've never seen, maybe 60, hair in a gray braid, eyes the color of old lake glass. She holds a deck of cards and a knowing smile. You don't know me, she says, but I think I know where this is going. Oh, do you? I say, because cryptic is for men in hats. I'm the woman people pay to tell them the truth they're already choking on, she says. A fortune teller, if we're being quaint. A strategist, if we're being useful. I don't let many strangers in, but I'm tired of pretending I'm not building an ark. I open the door wider. Come in, I say. Tell me what I already know and what I'm not brave enough to say out loud. And then stay for tea. She steps over the threshold like a priest. You're going to have to leave, she says, without looking at the cards. And you're going to have to do it before the child you made decides to unmake you. I smile, and it's not kind. Good, I say. I was hoping we could skip to the part where I pack. My name is still Erica. Or maybe it's not, depends on who's asking and how sharp their memory is. But that morning, when the gray-braided woman walked into my kitchen smelling faintly of sage and smoke, I was every inch the mother of a prodigal thief. A woman whose heart had learned to file restraining orders against its own hope. She set her deck of cards on the table like a surgeon laying out instruments. "You don't believe in this, do you?" she asked, not looking up. "I believe in receipts," I said, pouring her a cup of tea. "And in women who knock before they deliver bad news." She smiled, and there was something knowing in it, like she'd seen my type 100 times. Women who've cried once, burned the tissues, and started alphabetizing their vengeance. "You've been living on borrowed peace," she said, shuffling. "And it's about to come due. Join the club," I muttered. "Membership doubles after menopause." She laid out 3 cards. The Tower, the Devil, and Death. All the ones fortune tellers usually hide until after the second cup. "Well, aren't you dramatic?" I said, leaning back. "You call it drama," she said. "I call it clarity." The Tower showed lightning striking a fortress, people falling. I knew that look. It was my house the night the police came, my daughter's smirk as they led her away. The Devil, chains, temptation, greed. No need for subtitles. Then Death, a skeleton riding through chaos. "Not an ending," the woman said, "but a transformation." "Easy for a skeleton to say. You can't fix her," she said simply. "Not because she's broken, but because she likes the shape of her cracks." "You sound like my therapist," I said. "Except she costs more and doesn't bring props." The woman ignored me, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the table. "You have a darkness following you, not hers, yours. You've carried it since childhood, though you think you don't remember it. You look for your roots, but you're digging in the wrong garden." "I'm an orphan," I said. "My past is a question mark." "Not quite," she said, eyes gleaming. "It's more like an unfinished sentence. Someone else wrote the first line, and you've been afraid to turn the page." I wanted to laugh, but her words landed like small stones against glass. "Listen," I said, "I appreciate the poetry, but my problem isn't spiritual. It's biological. My daughter's a sociopath with expensive taste." She smiled again. "Then you know where she gets it." That one stung. I might have poured my tea a little too hard. She spread the last few cards in a fan. "She'll come out," she said, "sooner than you think. And when she does, she'll look for you. She's clever, but she's not alone. The man Bill is still free. He owes people who don't believe in forgiveness." "I gathered," I said dryly. "He left me a love note written in threats." The woman nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. "You need to leave before they come to collect. Sell the house. Change your names. Take your husband and go." "Go where?" I asked, though the question felt rhetorical. I'd been running in circles for months. Why not upgrade to straight lines? "Far enough that your ghosts get bored," she said. "And before you go, promise me something." "I don't do promises," I said. "They age badly." "Promise anyway," she insisted. "Don't go looking for your parents. The truth isn't buried, it's imprisoned. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find why your daughter turned out the way she did." She pushed a small envelope across the table. Inside was an old photograph, yellowed at the edges. A woman with dark hair and my exact jawline, holding a little girl who could have been me. The back said only, "Newark, 1970. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. She stood, gathering her cards. "Consider it a warning. Some bloodlines don't want to be rediscovered." Before I could press her, she was gone through the door, into the sunlight, like smoke deciding it was done being visible. My husband came home an hour later, briefcase in hand, face pale as a ghost that's just been insulted. "There's talk," he said, "at the bank. Someone's been calling, asking if I'm under investigation for money laundering. They used my full name, my old name, from before we got married." That was the moment I realized how fast rot spreads. The walls of that house had held laughter, birthdays, the smell of rosemary and mistakes, but now it smelled like danger. My daughter was behind bars, yet somehow she'd reached out with invisible hands and started unmaking our lives. "She's trying to drag us down with her," I said. "She said she'd get even. She's succeeding. he murmured, sitting heavily. I got a notice credit card debt I didn't make. Someone's using my social security number. Identity theft. Revenge modernized. I showed him the photo. A woman came, I said. A fortune teller. Said not to look for my past. Said our daughters like me. He stared at the photo. She does look like you, he said. What did she mean, like you? I don't know, I lied. Because deep inside, I did. I'd seen that same unbothered glint in the eyes of the woman in the photo, the same one my daughter had when she said, "You'll regret this, Mom." We sat there a long while. The clock ticked like a metronome for dread. Finally, he said, "We have to move. We'll lose everything." We already did, he said. Now it's about survival. So we sold the house. Not for what it was worth. People don't pay full price for rooms with secrets, but enough to buy anonymity. We packed what we could fit into a truck. Some clothes, my herb jars, his crossword books, a few photos I couldn't bear to burn. The rest stayed behind, like memories that had outstayed their welcome. Before we left, I went out back one last time. The patch of dirt where my daughter had buried her trophies had grown over, grass stubbornly pretending nothing ever happened. I knelt, pressed my hand to the soil. "You'll forgive me," I whispered, not to her, but to the woman I used to be, the one who believed motherhood was a spell strong enough to banish darkness. We drove all night, through 2 states and a storm that felt personal. My husband fell asleep halfway, his hand still gripping mine. Around dawn, we crossed into Pennsylvania. The fog was thick enough to erase our rearview mirror. I thought that was fitting. We stopped in a small town called Millhaven, population small enough to memorize. The realtor, a woman named Grace who wore pearls and suspicion in equal measure, showed us a cottage by the lake. It smelled of cedar and clean slates. "Quiet here," she said. "Good place to start over." We signed under fake names, Cynthia and John Myers. I chose Cynthia because it sounded like a woman who didn't take advice, especially from fortune tellers. We unpacked. The silence was different here. Not threatening, just blank, waiting for us to write something on it. For the first few weeks, we almost pretended to be normal. He found work fixing computers for a local school. I started a small business online, selling teas and handmade soaps. No one asked questions. No one knew the daughter who'd stolen our past, until one afternoon. I was at the farmer's market, selling lavender sachets to a woman who looked vaguely familiar, when she said, "You remind me of someone." "Oh," I said lightly. "Someone you knew?" "Yes," she said, tilting her head. "A woman named Helen, or maybe Helena. She lived here 50 years ago. Looked just like you. Caused a lot of trouble, that one. Locked her daughter in the house one night and disappeared." I froze. "What happened to the daughter?" "No one knows," she said. "Poor thing vanished not long after. Some said she ran away, others said she followed her mother. She paid for her sachet and left, humming." That night, I couldn't sleep. I took out the photograph from the envelope. The woman, my maybe mother, smiled faintly, holding a child with my eyes. I turned it over again. Newark, 1970. What if the woman in the photo, the one who'd caused trouble, was her? The same woman from Millhaven? The same one who'd vanished? If so, what did that make me? The next morning, I drove to the address the woman at the market had mentioned, a crumbling Victorian near the edge of the lake. The man who answered was in his 80s, wearing suspenders and a memory that hadn't retired. "Helen," he said. "Yes, I bought this place from her after she disappeared." "You look like her." He led me inside. "Found a box in the attic years ago. Never threw it out. You might as well have it, you've got her face." The box was small, wooden, the lock rusted. Inside were photographs, dozens of them faded, curled at the edges. In one, the woman stood beside a little girl at a bus stop, waving. In another, she was in front of a courthouse, holding papers. Then one more, the woman in handcuffs, led by police. On the back, someone had written, "Trenton State Prison, 1972. My pulse thudded like it was trying to dig its own escape route. My mother, if that's who she was, wasn't dead. She was serving life somewhere in New Jersey. I sat on the floor of that dusty old house, surrounded by her pictures, feeling something strange rise in me. Not grief, not fear, recognition. She'd run too, just like me. I could have stopped there, put the lid back on the past, walked away, told myself peace was better than truth. But peace and I never lasted long. That night, I told my husband everything. He listened without interrupting, then poured us each a glass of red wine and said, "If she's alive, do you want to find her?" I thought of the fortune teller's voice, "Don't look for the past." And then I thought of my daughter, sitting in her cell, plotting revenge with my blood in her veins. "Yes," I said. "I think I need to know who started this fire." He sighed. "Then we find her. But we do it quietly." He took my hand. "Because if your mother's anything like you, she won't want to stay hidden." He was right. But what neither of us knew, then what no fortune teller could have warned, was that finding my mother would lead me straight back to the one person I'd been trying to outrun all along. My daughter. They say blood calls to blood. I used to think that was poetic nonsense until the night I found myself dialing the Trenton Correctional Facility at midnight, whispering a name I'd never spoken but had always known. Helen Marlowe. That was the name on the back of the prison photo, the woman with my face, my jawline, and that infuriating half-smile I thought I'd invented. The woman I was beginning to suspect had invented me. The operator sounded like she'd seen it all. "Inmate lookup. You'll need a reason for contact." I almost said family, but that word felt like a weapon these days. "Journalistic inquiry," I lied. "A piece about women who disappear." She didn't care. "Helen Marlowe. Life sentence. Minimum security wing. Still alive." Alive. 2 syllables, and every one of my bones shifted position. I hung up before she asked more questions, because the truth was suddenly a wild animal I wasn't ready to hold. My husband, bless his steady heart, came into the kitchen wrapped in his old flannel robe. "You're doing it again," he said. "What, looking for ghosts?" "She's not a ghost," I said. "She's a headline that never ran." He poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter. "You said the fortune teller told you not to look. She also told me to sell the house." I shot back. "Which, you might recall, worked out just fine." He smiled at that, tired but loving. "If you're going to find her, do it smart." "Quietly. Quietly is my middle name," I said. "Erica Quiet Myers." He snorted. "Sure it is. You married me at a courthouse with a protest outside. Nothing about you is quiet." I smiled, because he was right. It's not in my nature to tiptoe through revelations. 2 days later, I drove to Trenton. It's strange how prisons always look like schools that gave up on optimism. Same bland brick, same fences, same air of forced order. The woman at the visitor's desk looked at my ID, squinting as if the name Cynthia Myers didn't sit right on my face. "First time visit?" she asked. "Yes." "Relationship to inmate?" I hesitated, then said the only truth that mattered. "Daughter." Her expression softened, not out of kindness, but recognition. "Sign here." They took my bag, my phone, my nerves. When the door locked behind me, the sound was final, like punctuation at the end of a life. The guard led me down a hallway that smelled of bleach and resignation. Then the door opened, and there she was, Helen Marlowe. Older, yes, 70s, maybe, but her presence filled the room like static. Her hair was silver, tied back, her posture upright, and her eyes, those were mine. Or maybe mine were hers. She studied me for a long, silent minute. Then, "You're me." I almost laughed. "That's a hell of an opening line." "Well," she said, her voice gravel and honey, "it's not every day you meet your reflection 50 years removed." We sat. The guard stayed by the door, pretending not to listen. "I think you're my mother," I said. "I know I am," she said simply. "The nose gives it away." It should have been emotional, cinematic, even violins, tears, reunion, but it wasn't. It felt surgical, clean and sharp. Because this wasn't about love. It was about origin. "Why were you in prison?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "I'm guessing the same reason you're hiding under a new name." "Because I trusted the wrong man." "Bill," I said automatically. She shook her head. "Different man." Same pattern. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Your father was charming, dangerous. I met him at a motel off Route 9 when I was 22 and stupid. He said he worked in antiques. Turned out, he just stole them. We were Bonnie and Clyde with a grocery list. Then I got pregnant. You left me, I said. I tried to protect you, she corrected. The night the police came, I locked you in the house and ran to draw them off. I thought they'd let you be, but they took me, and the state took you. I let that sit. So you thought abandonment was protection. I thought survival was, she said quietly. And here you are, alive, angry. That's half my legacy right there. Half, the other half, she said, smiling that crooked smile, is defiance. There it was, the familiar fire, the same one my daughter had, the same one that had burned my peace down to cinders. Your daughter, she said suddenly. She's the reason you came, isn't she? My throat tightened. She's in prison, like you. Theft, drugs, lies. And she hates me for turning her in. Helen's eyes softened, almost proud. She sounds like me. That's what the fortune teller said. She's right. You can't change what's written in the blood, but you can choose how to read it. I leaned forward. Then tell me, how do I stop her from becoming you? She chuckled, a sound full of rust. Oh, honey, you can't stop a storm. You learn how to build higher ground. Before I could ask more, the guard tapped his watch. Visiting hours over. Helen reached across the table and squeezed my hand's strong grip for a woman her age. I heard you changed your name, she said. Good, keep it changed. And when she comes, and she will, don't run. Make her face what she made. You think she'll come after me? Helen's gaze was steady, unflinching. I know she will. It's in her blood. It's how we end things, with confrontation, not closure. Then she leaned closer. But remember this, Erica or Cynthia, or whoever you are now, evil doesn't skip generations. It just looks for new ways to disguise itself. She winked. Sometimes the only way to kill it is to look it in the eye. The guard led me out. I didn't cry. Not until I got to the parking lot, sat in the car, and looked in the rearview mirror. My eyes were hers, my daughter's too. 3 generations of women who didn't know how to surrender. That night, back in Millhaven, my husband poured me a drink before I could ask. How was she? He said. Alive, I said. And dangerous in all the right ways. He nodded slowly. And what now? Now, I said, staring into my glass, we wait for the next storm. It came faster than either of us expected. 2 weeks later, the local news ran a short segment. Inmate escapes during transfer. I didn't have to see the name. I knew. My daughter was out. I watched the screen flicker, my heartbeat matching the crawl of the news ticker. Somewhere, out there, she was moving, breathing, planning. She'll come, I said quietly. My husband's hand closed around mine. Then we'll be ready. The wind howled outside, rattling the old cottage windows like laughter. I thought of my mother's words, you can't stop a storm, you build higher ground. And in that moment, I knew I'd build something higher than she could ever reach. Because of blood calls to blood, the mine was finally going to answer. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old Millhaven cottage sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind was a car door closing. She was out. My daughter, my blood, my ghost, my punishment. And if I knew her at all, she wasn't running away. She was running toward me. Morning arrived gray and slow, as if the sky was trying to buy me time. My husband, ever the optimist, made pancakes because apparently carbohydrates could cure fear. You can't live waiting for her to show up, he said, handing me a plate. We'll call the police. They'll find her before she finds us. I almost laughed. They couldn't find her when she was inside, he sighed. Then we make plans, real ones, not the kind that involve tea leaves and ghosts. I didn't tell him that the ghosts had already moved in. I saw them in the mirror, in the photographs of my mother I'd brought home from that old house by the lake. Women who all looked like me, as if we'd been photocopied by fate, and each version came out a little darker than the last. By noon, the news stations were in full frenzy. Escape from county lockup. Suspected assistance from outside. 2 guards injured, one vehicle stolen. I didn't have to wonder who provided the outside assistance, Bill. The boy who turned crime into choreography. The boy who once smirked at me and said, "Funny doesn't look good on a witness stand." Well, I wasn't on the stand anymore. I was standing on my own front porch, staring at the empty road that led into town. My fingers itched for something to hold, so I picked up the shovel from where it leaned against the railing. The same shovel she'd once used to bury her secrets. Irony, and I have always been on a first-name basis. I spent the afternoon digging in the garden not because I needed to plant anything, but because it kept my hands busy. I planted fear and pretended it was lavender. When I came inside, my husband was on the phone, whispering, "Yes, yes, witness protection or relocation, or whatever you call it. She's threatening us again. Yes, I have proof." He hung up, face pale. "They said they'll review our case." "Review," I repeated. "That's government code for lose your file in the wrong drawer." He smiled weakly. "You always did translate bureaucracy better than anyone." That evening, we tried to eat dinner like normal people. We failed. Halfway through his soup, he froze. "Did you lock the back door?" "Yes, positive as I am that she inherited your stubbornness." Then came the sound, a thump soft, deliberate against the window pane. Then another. We both turned. A small pebble rolled down the glass. Someone was outside. My husband rose, slow and careful. "Stay here." "Not a chance," I said, grabbing the shovel again. He peered through the curtain. The yard was empty. Just shadows, wind, and the faint ripple of the lake behind the house. "Probably kids," he said, but his voice didn't believe him. I stepped closer to the window. That's when I saw it. A note pressed against the glass from the outside, held in place by a knife stabbed into the wooden frame. The paper fluttered like a nervous heart. I opened the door. Against his protests, I stepped out, barefoot on the cold porch. The night smelled like pine and warning. The note said, in my daughter's handwriting, "You took everything from me. I'll take it back, piece by piece." Below the words, taped to the page, was something that stopped my breath. A photograph of me and my husband taken through the living room window. "She's watching us," I whispered. "She's been here." We called the sheriff. A kind man with tired eyes came, took the note, looked around, and left us with the kind of reassurance that costs nothing. "Probably just to scare you. She won't risk another charge by showing up." He didn't know my daughter. She'd risk anything, especially if it made her feel like she was still in control. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that tasted like dread. The wind pushed against the windows. My husband finally drifted to sleep on the couch, one hand clutching the baseball bat we dug out of the closet. I took out the photo of my mother, Helen Marlowe, and laid it beside the note. 3 generations, aligned like chapters of a cursed book. And then, as the clock struck midnight, I heard it again. The sound of metal and dirt. My heart stopped. It was the same rhythm I'd heard months ago, the shovel, the digging, the scrape of secrets being buried or unearthed. I crept to the window. The moon hung low, casting silver over the yard. And there by the fence someone was digging. Not my daughter. A man, tall, wearing a hood, a flashlight gripped in his teeth. The shovel bit into the ground, steady and strong. "Bill." I didn't think. I moved. Out the door, shovel in hand, heart pounding. He didn't hear me until I was 10 feet away. "Looking for something?" I asked. He spun, startled. The flashlight beam hit my face. "Jesus, lady, don't sneak up like that." "Funny," I said, raising the shovel. "That's what I was about to tell you." He smirked, recovering fast. "Relax. I'm just retrieving something that doesn't belong to you. Everything buried in this yard belongs to me now," I said. He tilted his head. "Even if it wasn't yours to begin with?" "Especially then." He straightened, the metal of the shovel glinting. "You shouldn't have crossed her. She's my daughter. She's my partner. Partners betray each other," I said. "Family just finishes the job." For a moment, we just stared at each other, two soldiers on opposite sides of the same heartbreak. Then he dropped the shovel and reached into his jacket. I didn't wait to see what for. I swung. The sound it made wasn't cinematic. It was dull, brutal, and too real. He crumpled with a curse. I dropped the shovel and ran inside, locking every door, every window. My husband woke at the noise, panic written across his face. What happened? Bill, I said, breathless. He's out there, digging. We called the sheriff again. When they arrived, there was no Bill, just the shovel, the disturbed earth, and a fresh hole that looked like a wound. The deputy shook his head. He's gone, but he left something. He handed me a plastic bag. Inside was a necklace, my grandmother's pearls, the ones my daughter had stolen, the ones I thought I'd lost forever. He was digging it up, the deputy said. Guess he buried it here for safekeeping. Safekeeping. The word made me laugh, sharp and hollow. My husband put an arm around me. It's over, he said softly, but I knew better. The necklace wasn't a gift. It was a message. My daughter had sent Bill here not to steal, but to remind me. She could reach me anytime she wanted. And if there's one thing my mother taught me, it's this. When the enemy tells you they can find you, you make sure they regret the trip. By morning, I had a plan. No police, no running this time. If my daughter wanted to play her little game, she'd learn exactly where she got her fire. I'd spent a lifetime trying to be the peaceful one, the forgiving one. Now it was my turn to be the storm. I wrote her a letter, short, precise, just enough bait to catch her attention. You want to talk? Meet me at the house on Lake Road. Midnight. Come alone. Then I drove to the post office and mailed it not to her, but to the one person I knew she'd be watching, Bill's sister. By sundown, the trap was set, and as the moon rose over the water, I sat on that old porch, the wind curling around me like a prophecy, waiting for the storm my blood had promised me since the day she was born. Because sometimes, to end a family curse, you don't run from it. You invite it to dinner and make sure it leaves hungry. When midnight finally came, it didn't sneak, it arrived loud, wearing the smell of rain and memory. The lake outside the old house was a dark mirror, and I could almost see my mother's reflection floating there beside mine. She'd warned me once, you can't stop a storm, you build higher ground. Well, tonight, I wasn't building. I was waiting for lightning. The house on Lake Road stood just as I'd left it the week before, abandoned, crooked with secrets, the wallpaper peeling like tired skin. I left every light off except one, a weak bulb hanging in the front room, casting enough glow to say someone's home, but not enough to reveal who. I sat at the table in my mother's old kitchen, the pearl necklace, my reclaimed ghost, wrapped tight around my wrist. My husband wanted to come with me, but I told him no. This was between me, my daughter, and whatever blood curse our family had been dragging behind us for 3 generations. If she wanted revenge, she'd have to take it from the source. The first sound was gravel under tires, then footsteps, slow, cautious, then her voice. Mom, even whispered. It hit me like thunder. I rose, letting the chair scrape the floor. Come in, I said. The door creaked open. She stepped inside wearing a dark jacket, wet hair clinging to her face. She was thinner than I remembered, harder. But her eyes, my eyes, were bright, alert, dangerous. You shouldn't have called me here, she said. They're looking for me everywhere. I'm sure they are. She moved closer, scanning the room like a cat entering someone else's den. You set me up, didn't you? You called the cops on Bill. He set himself up, I said. He left a trail even an honest man could follow. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You always think you're smarter. You and Dad, pretending to be saints while judging everyone around you. You stole from people who trusted you, I said quietly. You nearly got your father arrested for something you planted. And then you tried to destroy us. She tilted her head. You called that destruction? That was practice. I took a step forward. And this? Is this the encore? Depends, she said. Are you ready to confess? I blinked. To what? She pulled something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. She tossed it on the table. It was a copy of the forged email, the one that claimed I'd pawned my own jewelry for pills. I know you didn't write it, she said, but the police will think you did. I have a dozen more. Messages, receipts, fake bank transfers. I could bury you in lies before sunrise, and what would that buy you? I asked. She smiled. Freedom, money, a little poetic justice. You think revenge is poetry? I think it's the only language you taught me. That one landed hard. For a second, I saw her as she'd been at 5 years old, pink overalls, scraped knees, eyes full of stubborn love. I remembered how she'd once said, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you, Mom." God help me, she had. I didn't call you here to fight, I said finally. I called you here to end this. Oh, now you want peace? She said, stepping closer. You think I'll just forgive you because you're sorry? No, I said, because I'm not. Her smile faltered. What? I'm not sorry, I said, voice low but steady. For turning you in, for saving your father's life, for standing between you and the hole you keep digging. You wanted to see where you came from? Look around. This is your inheritance. This house, this curse, this mirror. I gestured toward the broken mirror on the wall, its cracked surface splitting our reflections into fragments. You and I said, are what happens when love and damage sleep in the same bed. She stared at me, breathing hard, her knuckles white around the paper. You think you're so righteous? No, I said. I think I've finally accepted I'm not. Her eyes flicked toward the window, calculating. You told someone I'd be here. I told no one, I said, but I did leave the porch light on. She frowned, then noticed the faint glow outside, the beam that cut through the dark. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound. So what's the plan? You're going to turn me in again? No, I said, stepping closer until I could smell the rain on her jacket. I'm going to tell you something my mother told me. Evil doesn't skip generations, it just learns new tricks. But courage, if you nurture it, can be inherited too. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means you can choose, I said, right now. You can hand yourself in, tell them everything, and start over. Or you can keep running, and I'll make sure you never have a place to hide again. She laughed again, but this time her voice cracked. You do that to your own daughter? I already did, I said. Twice. For the first time, she looked shaken. You don't scare me. You should, I said. Then came the sound, a siren, distant but approaching. Red and blue lights flickered faintly through the window. Her eyes widened. You lied. I said I didn't call anyone, I said. I didn't. But I did leave that porch light on. Her jaw clenched. You always find a way to win. This isn't winning, I said. This is surviving. She turned toward the door, but I stepped in front of her. You run, you make it worse. For you, for me, for everyone you touch. Move, she hissed. Make me. Her hand darted into her jacket. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought she had a gun. But when she pulled it out, it wasn't a weapon. It was my mother's photograph. The one I'd shown her years ago, when she was little, asking, do you think I look like her? She held it up. You think you're better than me. You're just her, pretending to be new. The sirens grew louder. Tires screeched outside. I stepped closer, my voice steady but cold. Maybe, but at least I learned how to stop pretending. She stared at me, trembling, torn between rage and fear. Then she did something unexpected. She dropped the photo and sank to her knees. The sound of police doors slamming outside filled the silence. When the officers burst in, she didn't fight. She just looked up at me and said, "You win, Mom." But it won't last. They cuffed her gently, almost respectfully, and led her away. I followed them to the door. Rain had started to fall, soft and slow. As they pushed her into the back seat, she turned once more. Her expression wasn't hatred anymore, it was something worse. Pity. You'll see, she said. You'll end up just like her. The car pulled away, red and blue bleeding into the rain. Inside, I picked up the fallen photograph. My mother, young and fierce, smiled up at me like she'd been waiting. Maybe my daughter was right. Maybe this was how it always ended with women like us, standing in the ruins of the lives we built, too proud to call them ruins. But as I stared at that photo, I felt something shift. The curse wasn't in the blood. It was in the silence, the way we never told the truth until it was too late. So I decided I would. I'd write it all down, every lie, every betrayal, every time I mistook control for love. Maybe the next woman born from this bloodline would read it and choose differently. Outside, the sirens faded into the distance, and the lake went still. For the first time in years, I felt the air clear around me. I whispered to the darkness, "It ends here," but the wind that came through the broken window answered softly, like a warning, "Or it begins." The morning after the storm, Millhaven looked scrubbed clean, like the town had been through confession. The air smelled of rain and pine, and the lake behind the house reflected a sky too bright to trust. My daughter was back in custody. The deputies promised me she'd be transferred to a higher security facility this time. No more small town breaks, no more convenient errors in supervision. My husband slept in fits, waking with a start every hour, his hand reaching for mine like a man afraid of his own dreams. But me? I didn't sleep at all. I sat by the window and watched the dawn peel itself open, thinking about my mother in her cell, my daughter in hers, and me sitting free but somehow still locked up in the same story. Around 10, the phone rang. It was the detective from Trenton. "She'll be processed by noon," he said. "We'll make sure she can't contact you." "Detective," I said, "she doesn't need a phone to reach me. She's in my head already." He hesitated. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Myers. Or is it Stone?" "Both," I said, "depending on who's asking." When he hung up, I made a decision that surprised even me. I was going back to Trenton. Not for my daughter, she'd chosen her road, but for Helen Marlowe, my mother, the original Storm. Prison looks different the second time you visit. The fear burns off, replaced by something quieter, acceptance, maybe, or exhaustion. When I walked into the visitor's room, Helen was already there, waiting with the same knowing smile she'd worn the first time. "You did it," she said. "You stopped her, for now." She nodded slowly. "The women in this family always think in forevers. Sometimes for now is enough." I sat across from her. "She almost killed a man. She forged evidence. She said I'd end up like you." Helen's smile didn't fade. "Then you'd better prove her wrong." "I don't know if I can," I said. "We're all copies of each other, different eras, same mistake." "No," she said firmly. "You're the first one who didn't run." That's the difference. For the first time, I realized she was right. She'd run. My daughter had run. I'd stayed through the humiliation, the betrayal, the loneliness, stayed to face what the others buried. Helen leaned closer. "What will you do now?" "I'll write," I said. "Everything. Every truth we hid. If courage can be inherited, I'll make sure the next woman born from us starts rich." She smiled. "Then maybe the curse breaks with you." When I left, the guard gave me a small package, my mother's, he said. Inside was a letter written in her jagged script. "Erica," it read, "we don't get to choose the storms that make us, but we choose whether to become the lightning or the ground. You've been both. Now, be the shelter." Weeks passed. The papers ran short updates. Escaped inmate recaptured, Millhaven couple safe. Neighbors stopped pretending they didn't know my name. A few brave ones brought casseroles. The rest brought gossip. I accepted both pity and potatoes go down the same way. My husband and I rebuilt the cottage. We painted the kitchen yellow, the color of defiance disguised as optimism. On warm evenings, we sat on the porch drinking tea from mismatched mugs. He'd work on his crosswords. I'd scribble in a notebook that was slowly becoming a memoir. I called it The Garden That Wouldn't Stay Buried. Sometimes, when I walked by the lake, I could almost hear the echo of a shovel hitting dirt, the old rhythm of secrets. But now the sound didn't scare me. It reminded me that I'd survived. 3 months later, a letter arrived. No return address, no name, just a postmark from upstate. The handwriting was unmistakable, my daughter's. "Mom," it said, "you think you won. But I've been reading the news. They called you brave." I laughed. "You and Grandma were just better at hiding what you really are." Maybe I got caught because I'm honest about it. Maybe I'm the first one who stopped pretending. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with my mother's photograph. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. Because she was wrong. I wasn't hiding anymore. That night, I walked to the edge of the lake and dropped the letter into the water. The paper floated for a moment, then sank slow, deliberate, gone. I whispered to the dark, no more digging. A year later, we moved again, not to run, but to live. A small coastal town in Maine this time, with fog that feels like forgiveness. People here don't ask questions as long as you bring pie to the church sale. I sell my teas at the farmer's market and keep my name as Cynthia Myers, though sometimes, when I sign a label, I catch myself adding an E at the end. Old habits die harder than villains. One afternoon, a girl came to my booth, freckles, wild curls, about 20. She picked up a jar of rosemary salve and said, "You remind me of my mother. She's difficult." I smiled. "Then you must be strong," she grinned. Trying to be. After she left, I watched her disappear into the crowd, a tiny spark of hope walking away on its own to feet. Maybe that's how curses end, not with a miracle, but with a stranger reminding you that you're still capable of gentleness. That night, I sat on the porch, notebook in my lap, moon rising over the ocean. My husband dozed beside me, the crossword slipping from his hands. I wrote the final words of my story, the ones that finally felt like truth. I used to think survival meant running. Now I know it means staying. I used to think love was forgiveness. Now I know it's boundaries. And I used to think blood defined us. Now I know character does. The wind lifted the pages and flipped them like it wanted to read along. Somewhere out there, my daughter was alive, breathing the same air, carrying my face into another corner of the world. Maybe she'd change someday. Maybe she wouldn't. But I changed, and that was enough. I closed the notebook, kissed my husband's forehead, and whispered to the sea, "My name is Erica. I'm still here, and for the first time in my life, that was the whole story."